Good morning, this is Teresa Murtha with the Punta Gorda History Center for your History Moment. And as promised, we're focused on hurricanes, and I'm going to focus on one that actually affected this area on October 25th. That's right, today's October 25th, and this was October 25th of 1921, 102 years ago, but it happened then. And it was a storm, and I'll read it from the paper I have here, that it started in the Caribbean on October 20th. So it didn't take long for this thing to develop, because it then moved into a Category 4 hurricane, 140 miles an hour on the Safford scale, when it entered the Gulf of Mexico. But it then weakened somewhat to a Category 3 before it made landfall. And where it made landfall was in Tampa, and it's often referred to as the Tampa Hurricane of 1921. But it impacted Punta Gorda. It impacted Punta Gorda in a way that hurricanes of this nature, and this is why we're always a little bit afraid of hurricanes that are headed towards Tampa or are going to hit Tampa, because it did the thing that would happen here if that happened again, and that is it emptied the harbor. It drew the water out of Charlotte Harbor, and then it came thundering back. And I'm going to turn the camera around so that you can see some of the photos that we have of what that looked like when that happened. So here's a photo of Marion Avenue after, it was October 25th, and this is when the waters came thundering into Charlotte Harbor. And let's look at another one. As you can see, people were actually using canoes or skiffs in the streets to navigate the water that had come in. Okay, sorry about that. And here's another photo. This would have been Marion, right below Crosser, what now is US 41. And you can see how deep the water was on Marion Avenue of the day. I'll read to you a little bit about what was in the paper the next day or two. It was in Tampa in October 27th. From early Monday night until after nightfall Tuesday, Punta Gorda was swept by a hurricane of greater violence than any storm received within the last 50 years, bringing with it a tidal wave which covered the town to a depth of 5 feet in some places, and the combined force of wind and waves did great damage. But no lives were lost. That's a good thing. It was the greatest storm in 50 years. In October of 1910, there was a great storm, but though the wind that then reached a greater velocity, it did not cover as much territory. There's talk about children waiting around the streets all day, young people. Children really enjoyed it. Many of them wore their bathing suits and swam in the streets. The high school, of course, was suspended from school. When the town dock floated off, it carried with it a house that stood at the extreme and Standard Oil house, which fell in some weeks ago because of the rotting piles. The great bridge across the harbor, though, weathered the storm. That's the bridge, the first bridge that went over Charlotte Harbor, weathered the storm. But it had damage around it, lighters, boats, wreckage, all roll in and completely over it all day. The seawall escaped injury. There was a seawall built in 1910, and that seawall escaped any injury, which is amazing, really. Not one dwelling was totally wrecked so far, or even injured. So it was a water event, although they had a lot of water damage. It wasn't really a wind event. And we talked about that too when we talk about hurricanes. They can be both, but water events are really more dangerous. In fact, it's amazing that no one was injured badly or killed. The wholesale fishermen suffered losses, the full extent and nature, which they did not know at the time, but it was significant. Okay, well, that's my minute. Actually, I exceeded my moment a little bit because I think it was important to tell the story. And that's my last hurricane story of the year. So hopefully we won't experience anything like this. We've gotten beyond it. Keep our fingers crossed. Thank you for listening.